Y'all, welcome back to my channel. It's Shantae from Simply Shantae's Plans. Today is episode 4 of my back to school series, and I'm very excited to be here because I love talking about how to use our tools to support us, which is honestly what this video is about. In today's video, I'll be talking about how to use the Erin Condren academic planner to unit plan or scope and sequence for your class. I do have 2 Erin Condren lesson planners here, both the focused version and the Mid-Century Circles colorful version. The reason I'm talking about the academic planner today is because in secondary school with my colleagues, we have found that sometimes it is a little bit difficult to use all of the space in the Erin Condren teacher lesson planner. There's several sections here and it's also a really big book. So last year and the year before, a few of my colleagues and I have worked out how to use the academic planner as a second option when the teacher lesson planner is too much. The academic planner is a smaller size. It's 7 by 9 and it has less columns and spaces, so it's a little bit easier to manage. I do have a review of both of these planners on my YouTube channel already, so if you'd like to look at those, I will leave them in the description box below. Today I'm just talking merely function, how to use this book in a way to help you organize the long-term scope of your class. Now for today, I'm just going to do a sample. I'm not going to do a fully fleshed out unit plan or anything like that, but I just want to give you a little bit of an idea of how it can be used. Here is the March monthly spread, and this precedes the weekly views of March. I have a lot going on here, and I'm going to go through all of it in detail, but I'm going to start with the sidebar. Here is the notes sidebar of the planner. You can see that I have broken it up into 3 sections: objectives, standards, and assessment. Your objectives would be here. I didn't write any in, but what you would write is the skill or task that you would like students to be able to do or perform at the end of the unit. Basically, what is the end goal? What are you trying to get them to do? This standard here will come from your school's state standards, and this gives the purpose for the task. Why are we learning these things? What is the purpose of it? For this example, I have 2 different standards, a writing standard and a reading informational text standard. And then in the final box down here is assessment. How will you be able to show proof that the student is able to complete the task or has mastered the standard? How will you be able to determine if they're able to do that or not? I have a few different types of assessment here. I have a quiz, a one-to-one verbal assessment, free response, written answers, and then I also have site-based because this is important. Your school will likely have throughout the year different assessments that they ask students to take, and I always include this because they are usually not able to change or move around. So I put them in right away on my unit and scope and sequencing, so that way I know not to plan anything over it. I also add it into my monthly view here just so I know it's coming up. So that's everything that I put on the sidebar, and it becomes really helpful when I am thinking about what my lessons are going to look like because I can re-ground myself in this specific purpose. What do I want them to do? Why do I want them to do it? And how am I going to be able to tell that they are doing it? Let's move back to the full monthly spread. Right, so this monthly spread could look overwhelming to some, I understand that, but once you start getting into it, it's actually not that bad. I color code everything and it makes it so much easier for me. I highly recommend color coding to other folks as well. The first thing I did here was I went ahead and highlighted across the dates the standard that I would be working on for that week. The color coding corresponds with the standards that I have put in the notes section. So the first writing standard I'm going to be working on the second week of March, and then this reading standard I'm going to be working on the 3rd and 4th weeks of March. So I can clearly see when I am putting my standards in, and this helps me make sure that I'm giving adequate time to all the standards that I need to cover. Typically, a school or a district will tell you what standards you should be focusing on, but I like to make sure that it's taken care of here. Alright, I've also put in my intro week because typically during my intro week, I'm just doing things to get students genuinely excited or engaged in the topic and not diving too hard into the actual standards. After I have done when I am planning to work on each standard, like I mentioned, I go ahead and make sure that I add in any site-based information that will impact my planning. So here I have 2 iReady assessments that we're going to have to take, as well as the end of the quarter, and then finally this last week here is spring break, so we won't have any school. Therefore, I won't be able to count on this time for my lesson planning. After I've done that, I go ahead and start putting in what lessons I'm going to complete on each day. I like to stretch my lessons out across a few days so that way students can really have time to deep dive into the content and engage with it. So I have listed a lesson for this week and a lesson for the next week as well. In my class, I like to keep things super routine and routinized, so we do the same thing each day. Mondays, we have revision day. On Tuesdays, last year was a synchronous Zoom session where we give direct instruction. Wednesday and Thursday are dedicated to learning and practicing and assessing the skill of the week. And then Friday, we have our language and reading practice with 2 programs that we were using last year. So this is basically an example from last year. So I know that each Monday, we're going to be working on revisions for students to relearn or correct or implement feedback that I had given them from the week before on the work they submitted. I also go ahead and mark in when I'm going to do my assessments. So here I have 3 cohorts of classes. I have listed when they're going to get their one-to-one assessment. Of course, it is color-coded to match the notes section. Then I've also go ahead and put these little stars for this type of assessment because it happens more frequently. I didn't want to take up too much space. And then finally, I added the quiz here, which was also listed in my notes section on the side. So basically, this is a giant overview of what I would like to happen during this month. I typically like to plan out a quarter at a time because that way I have a very clear plan of where I'm going for that quarter. This is very high overview and doesn't get into the nitty-gritty of what the actual lesson plans are or what materials I need. So that's when I start using the weekly pages, and I'm gonna flip to an example right now. Here is an example of a weekly spread that I would typically set up the week before it happens, which is why my to-do sections are blank. Because this book has less spots for to-dos, I want to make sure that what I'm writing here is super relevant. So I typically fill it out either the night before or the morning of. Let's get into some other elements that I have added on this spread. First, I have my weekly question. This is what we're working on in our class, what we're trying to solve or answer, what's guiding us through our lessons. This week happened to be, how do we determine the credibility of information or a source? On the other side, I go ahead and write in the standard that we're focusing on because I really want to make sure and be reminded often of what the standard is so I can make sure that my tasks that I'm asking students to do are super intentional and tied directly here. I don't want to bombard students with things that are irrelevant, and so I keep my standard at the forefront. The next thing I have written on this weekly spread is the materials needed for each day. So I go ahead in the first column on each day, I put materials. I include what assessment is happening that day. So on Wednesday and Thursday when I'm doing my skill of the week, I put the assessment here. Thursday they would get the homework assignment, and that's clearly marked. I've also included the affirmation that I will be sharing with my class this week to talk about the assignment. The affirmation this week was, we are critical thinkers and creators. So this is a mantra that we would be saying to ourselves as we work through our toughest days of the week, Wednesday and Thursday, to keep us motivated and to keep us grounded together. that's kind of the extra stuff I added. Here's where we get to the big meat and potatoes. So on Mondays, we have a revision day, like I mentioned. This is a highly routine day. I don't usually write anything down because students kind of get the gist of it at this point, but I do write down the materials I'm gonna need. Over here, let's skip to Tuesday. I just would write down the definitions, credible cues. It's just kind of a reminder of what's happening this day when I'm mapping it out and thinking about what I need to prepare, the slides I need to prepare, the handouts I need to prepare, because most of the lesson planning is digital. So this is kind of a reminder for me and a way to brainstorm what's going to happen. These pages don't always look pretty. Sometimes they're pretty messy, and that's okay because for me, this is for function. It's not for pleasure or for keeping nice. On Wednesday and Thursday, though, you can see that I've broken it up a little bit more with the actual activities that we're going to do. So review the definitions in our do now, read an article. Here's the 3 steps we're going to do: a close read, analyze the source, and then cooperate, as well as have them complete the Google free response. And same thing on Thursday. And then Friday is our language and reading practice day, so we have a few programs that we use, and I make sure to have a Chromebook cart ready for that because we do need the computers. And then I just put a reminder here to update the assignment tracker and post a parent square so students can see how they're progressing towards the standard. This is just one way to use these pages, and it has really worked for me and a few of my colleagues. Like I said, brainstorming, mapping it out, so that way when we go to actually execute, making the plans, making the handouts, making the slides, that we can have this right next to us and make sure that we are including everything that we had originally thought about. If you're a teacher, you may be able to relate that sometimes you feel super inspired to create these big things and you have all these plans and, oh, that would be a really cool activity, but then I often forget, so this is one way to help me remember. All right, everybody, that is it for today's video. I hope you found this video a little bit helpful and got a few ideas of how you could use the monthly view as well as the weekly view to lesson plan and scope and sequence your next unit. Like I mentioned, if you wanted to check out a full review of this planner, a walkthrough of all of its features, go ahead and click on the card above. I will have a link there. I also have a review of the teacher lesson planner if this is something that you are looking into as well. I have used several materials in this planner, including the Erin Condren dual tip markers and the new ballpoint pens, as well as this pencil case. This will be available for purchase in the back to school collection on July 7th. There's a link down below in my description box to shop that. Please consider using my link. I appreciate it so much. As always, thank you for being here and hanging out with me today. I appreciate your support. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel if you found this video helpful, and turn on the notification bell so that you are notified when I post my next video. Thank you again for tuning in today, and I will catch you next time.